You're listening to the Spark Your Light podcast, episode number 264, taking ownership of what you can control. This episode is for you if you feel like sometimes you don't know what's out of your control versus what you can control, and how do you take more ownership for your success while also maybe letting go of the things that are outside of your control, and where do you draw that line? That's what this episode is all about. And thank you so much to SYL for sponsoring today's episode. So this is something that I've thought a great deal about when it comes to our goals, because it often feels like things are outside of our control. Like so many of our goals rely on someone outside of us making a decision, right? Someone outside of you hiring you to get the job. Someone outside of you choosing you for the promotion. It feels like something that you can only do what you can do. Someone outside of you selecting your applications to get accepted into med school. And so all you can do is do a really good job on the application, and then it's someone outside of you choosing whether or not you get that thing. So where do you draw the line for what you can control? I'm here to tell you that you can control a whole lot more than you think you can. And so I found myself on this story of, okay, my dream that I'm working towards right now, that I've been talking about a lot in these episodes, is to have my book that I'm currently writing about hope on the shelves at Target someday. And I said to myself, well, I can only control, getting my book out there and getting the traditional publishing deal. But if Target doesn't want to stock my book because it's not selling enough copies, then that's out of my control. And so it's easy to say, well, if that person doesn't hire me for the job, then it's outside of my control. Or if I don't get selected and offered a spot in that school, then it's out of my control. But the truth is that when we really dig deep, there is a lot more in your control than you think there is. So with the book example, I realized, well, Target is going to want to stock my book on the shelves if it's selling enough copies. Whose control is it to sell those copies? Mine, right? So if what I'm doing to market the book isn't working, then I need to try a different strategy. I need to figure out a way to, as Steve Martin says, be so good they can't ignore you. And that's what I'm going to be committed to. It is in my control. It is in my control to, number one, write a book that is so good that everyone is going to want to share it and tell their friend about it because it actually changed their life. It actually helped them. And then number two, it's in my control to find the marketing strategies that help it reach people. So even though it feels like, well, it's someone outside of me making a decision, yes or no, it's actually much more in my control to sway that yes. And the same is true for you and your goal. So whether it's going for the job, first of all, what is in your control that you can better prepare yourself to be the best candidate, number one. And same thing with the application to med school or whatever it is the goal is. And then number two, if it doesn't go the way you wanted it to, what also is in your control is how you react to it. So like I gave with the Target example, if Target says, hey, we're not going to stock this book, or we stocked it for a month and we didn't get enough sales, so we're not going to keep carrying it. It feels like you got the no. It feels like you didn't get the thing you wanted, and so that's when most people give up. But you are not most people. This is the moment where you can ask yourself, what is in my control? And what is in your control is how you respond to not getting the thing you want, where you take it from there. So with the book example, I will take back my power and know that, okay, what do I need to do to get them to change their mind about that decision? The same is true about a job. And it doesn't have to be to get them to change their mind. It could be, okay, what am I lacking? Maybe you don't have experience in that specific department. Can you get experience? Can you ask if you can do some shadowing or maybe a job swap opportunity where you're going to do a little bit of work from that team to get that experience? And then the next time the role comes around or a similar role, you're going to be a great candidate for it. If you don't get into the med school, okay, what can you do to make yourself a better candidate for other med schools or for applying again in the future, right? And so there is so much more in our control than we like to admit. It feels better to believe that we did all the things and it just wasn't in the card for us because we're not taking accountability or blame for not getting the things we want. It feels better to release the control to someone else. But when we do that, it feels worse to have a mediocre life, to live a life that is not filled with the things that spark your light. So your choice is pain now or pain later. Pain now is taking full accountability for what is actually in your control, which includes your reaction to not getting the thing you want and how you respond to it and how you stay committed to it and persevere despite a bumpy road. Pain later is the culmination of releasing control and ultimately living a life that is not filled with the things that spark your light. I would rather choose pain now and have a life that I'm proud of and have a life that is filled with the things that truly light me up inside. And I know you would too. That's why you're here listening to this episode. So I want you to think about in your own life right now, where are you releasing control when you could take it back? When you could take more accountability and more ownership for the prep work and being the best possible version of yourself for this thing you want or for your response to it if it didn't work out. And when you fully own that, then you either get the things you want or something better. Because I do believe that sometimes things don't work out, even though we've done all the prep work, even though we've taken all the accountability. And that's because something better is coming. And something better could be in the format of a redirection where you are being redirected to a path that's better for you. So maybe you thought it was a certain job, but it actually wasn't. And I have a great example of this. My husband had applied to a job that he really wanted. He prepared so much for the interview to put his best foot forward. He really did that prep work. He took that accountability and he didn't get the job and he was really disappointed. And then a month after, that entire team was actually laid off and the team was not rehired. It was taken away from the company. And he felt so grateful that he didn't get the job. So sometimes we're being redirected to something better for us. And other times we're also learning lessons that we need that are going to prepare us for the things that we want and the things that we're committed to. So you might not get it on your first try or your second try or your third try or your 10th try, but you might be learning the exact lessons you need to get it on your 15th try. And on your 15th try, you are not only prepared to land whatever it is, whether it's the job, the med school spot, for me, the book opportunity, but you're prepared to succeed at it. You're prepared to excel at it. And you have built the necessary resources and skill that you need. So it really is a blessing in disguise if we are failing. And when you're able to take ownership and accountability, then those are your only options. You either get what you want, you get something better, or you get the lessons that you need it to prepare you to totally rock it in the future. But most people give up somewhere along the way. And as a part of giving up, they release that ownership. They say that this just wasn't meant to be. And oftentimes it was meant to be. And you were so close, but you gave up. or you are so close to your something better, because your something better doesn't just land in your lap, right? You get guided there divinely. And how do you know? I think this is a really great question that might be on your mind. How do you know the difference between something better and giving up? How do you know when it is time to release that control to something better? I have found my something better, and so I will share. When I first started building my business when I was in college, I first tried a product and then I tried an app, and both of those failed. And I felt really lost and really confused through that process, wondering, do I pivot? Do I keep trying on these ideas? And it was while I was building the app and we had done a beta test. I had spent all my money, first of all, which I raised on Kickstarter. So I'm now out of money. We did a beta test on the app with a few hundred women, and it had so many problems. And this is when I knew that things weren't working. So I either had to persevere for this vision, and I'd have to raise money and hire better app developers and start from square one, essentially, or pivot. And it was that question of giving up or something better. And I didn't make the decision until I knew that something better was aligning. And the reason I knew is because I felt sparked. It was because I didn't feel like I was giving up, not one bit. But I started to naturally stumble into these circles of speaking. It wasn't podcasting yet, because I didn't start a podcast for a whole nother year, but it was sharing the same kinds of things that I share on this podcast on Instagram. That was pretty much my main platform, Instagram. I would just come on and say, I just read a book about failure and here's what I learned. And I just kind of wanted to share it with my friends and family because I thought it could help them, because it was helping me when I was feeling so down. And it just naturally started to unfold and spark me and feel so divine. I had an intuitive knowing that this was the direction I was meant to go in. And I trusted that. So it was really a feeling. It was really a feeling that I was not giving up, but that I was being redirected. And I realized that I never would have found my way to this career if I hadn't had those failures, because there's just no way I would have just decided one day, I want to be a speaker. I want to start a podcast. I want to write books. But because of those failures, I was guided here. And so it's up to you to trust your own intuition and know the difference between giving up and being redirected. But don't give up and label it as redirection because you don't want to deal with the pain. Give up because it's no longer aligned to you, because you learned so much about yourself through the process and you thought you wanted one thing, but you actually realized you wanted another. I think we don't want to encourage stubbornness of continuing on something that isn't right for you. But we also don't want to use an excuse that we're being redirected if we just truly don't want to take accountability and responsibility for what is in our control, which is what this whole episode is about. So trust yourself, trust your feelings. The truth is that no one will know the difference except you. You will know if you are releasing the ownership because it's hard. No one else will know. Only you will, but you have to live with yourself and you have to live with that. So I will not release my ownership of how much control I have over target stocking this book once it's out in the world, because it's important to me. It sparks my light and I will have to live with it. No one else. My listeners won't have to live with it. I will have to live with it. And so because of that, I am willing to do what it takes, period. And that is taking accountability. And I cannot wait for you to be listening to this podcast maybe a couple years from now, realistically, with the timeline of landing a literary agent and then landing the traditional publishing deal. And by the way, if you're wondering where I am in the process, I am working on my book proposal, which then I will present to a literary agent. So that's where I'm at. So it may be a couple years from now, but I am confident that a couple years from now, and just for a timestamp, if I'm ever pulling this recording for a future podcast or something, which I just think will be so cool. At the time of recording, it is September of 2024 when I am working on my book proposal. I am taking full ownership and accountability that my book being on the shelves at Target is on me, and I am responsible for it. It is not on some decision maker who does buying for Target to decide yes or no. It is on me to be so good they can't ignore me. So my question for you is, what is on you right now in your life that you have been maybe releasing some of that ownership of? It's time for you to take it back. I promise your future self will thank you. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of Spark Your Light. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. And by the way, if you're a new listener, I know with the video podcast, we've attracted some new listeners. Maybe you came across one of our reels on Instagram or one of our TikToks and you checked out the podcast. And if you're loving the show, I would be super grateful if you leave a review on Apple Podcasts or stars on Spotify, wherever you listen. Or if you're on YouTube, give us a like. It all really helps the show reach other people who it's meant to reach. And so I'm really grateful for each and every one of you in helping not only to listen to the show, but to grow the show, because my number one goal is that this show reaches all of people that it can help. I mean, I just think podcasts are so amazing. They really helped me and still continue to help me in times where I could not afford to take an online course or, make any kind of investment. Even, I would get books from the library and sometimes, I had to get on the wait list. And that was even a lot when you're building a business, and just to have podcasts that are free resources to help people are so amazing. And, I'm not coming here selling anything. I'm just sharing. And so I just want this resource to get out there and reach as many people as I can. So thank you for the reviews. If you've already left a review, I know we have a lot of listeners who've been listening since I started in 2019, which is incredible. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me. And if you're new here, thank you. I'm so grateful and grateful for all the support. So thanks again for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next episode.